most spectacular festival in the Hindu calendar is Thaipusam. To the outside observer, Thaipusam is a grotesque gathering of sweaty, chanting zombies who pierce themselves, act out spiritual trances, and worship heathen gods. But to followers, it's the closest a Hindu can get to the gods and to the good fortune that awaits them for their sacrifices on this 3 to 5 day sensory overloaded celebration. Just outside of Kuala Lumpur lies the Batu Cave, which is one of several major locations where Thaipusam is celebrated in Malaysia. It takes place in Johor Bahru and in Ipoh, and it's also hosted on Penang Island. But even though it's a big deal in Penang, it attracts nowhere near the personage it does at the caves. Over the course of the event, nearly 1 million people return to this location every year to give thanks for their blessings and to pray for blessings the coming year. Those who believe that they've received their blessings from Lord Murugan come here to offer personal suffrage as a token of their penitence. But while the painful part is limited to the day of the celebration itself, devotees prepare for this event with a month of activities that range from slightly uncomfortable to downright unhealthy. Mostly though, it's a month of prayer. Then there are 2 days of fasting, eating only sattvic food and only once a day. And finally, on the day of the ritual, there's an exhausting hike, all while carrying jugs of milk and huge elaborate kavadi, or ornamental offerings of burden. Sattvic food, to explain the earlier mention, is food which is considered to be pure, which has not caused harm to any animal or environment, and which does not have a foul odor or which impairs the senses. The long, exhausting procession, mentioned before, starts at the Sri Mariamman Temple in Kuala Lumpur and continues nearly 14 kilometers to end here at the Batu Cave. It's an 8-hour trek, and many go barefoot, and when they arrive, they still have another 272 steps to ascend to the cave's temple at the top. The silver jugs of milk, or palkadam, are normally carried on the head, but are also sometimes hung from the body by hooks. The elaborate cage-like construction that is carried by the devotees is called the kavadi. This also translates to a burden of spears, as it normally also has spikes which pierce the body when it's carried. These are built and decorated all in an effort to keep the mind focused on God and personal sacrifice. Framed by aluminum and constructed in several tiers, they're normally adorned with peacock feathers and images of the gods, and they're almost always in the shape of a hill. If you knew nothing of this festival before having seen it, it may well come across as extreme. But Hindus take this ceremony very seriously. It's not uncommon for penitents to abstain from sex, shave their head and body hair, sleep on hardwood floors, maintain a vegetarian diet, and many other preparations throughout the month preceding the final showdown. Malaysia and Singapore are among the few places that one can actually celebrate Thaipusam. It was originally a Tamil Nadu celebration. However, because of the extreme nature of the ceremony, and through many years of participants dying of heat exhaustion, it's now banned throughout India. It is, however, still honored at least in some fashion in Thailand, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Mauritius, and Reunion Island. Of all of the mythology throughout the human lineage, I'd have to say that Hindu mythology is my absolute favorite. Having studied much of the text from the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata, I find this amazing collection of works to be almost magical in the level of creativity and imagination that went into their creation. And the story of Lord Murugan is a prime example. Of the vast pantheon of deities within Hinduism, Lord Murugan is the god of war and victory. He's also referred to as Tamis Kadavul, or God of Tamils. Thaipusam is sometimes mistaken as Murugan's birthday, but his birthday actually falls in the Vedic month of Vaikasi, when his birth star, Vishaka, aligns with the moon, sometime between May and June. The Hindu calendar is lunisolar, encompassing both lunar and solar influences, but much of its philosophy is also based in astronomy. In fact, the word Thaipusam is a combination of the Hindu month of Thai, which falls between January and February, and the word Pusam. Pusam is actually the name of a star, which is at its highest point in the northern sky during the time of the festival. And it's at this particular time that Parvati, the wife of Shiva, enlisted Murugan to vanquish Surapadman with his mighty vel. Murugan, realizing that Surapadman had morphed into a mango tree in an effort to hide from battle, split the tree with his giant spear. One half of the tree became an emblem for Murugan's victory, and the other half became a peacock. And the symbolism within this story is found all throughout the festival. This is the reason that devotees choose peacock feathers to decorate the canopies of their kavadi. Some devotees pierce their cheeks with a trident to represent Murugan's vel, or spear, and others still pierce their chest, arms, and back with hooks, hanging bells and lemons from them, or they attach them to chains and pull small chariots behind them. The lemons that hang from the hooks are representative of the larger and heavier mangoes, and they're also used to treat the lacerations from the pierced skin once the task has been completed. The juice cleans and disinfects the body, but the pain also tests the mettle of the devotee in the final moments of the ceremony. All told, this celebration is one of color, sound, and human will, and even the non-Hindu visitors to this place are swept up in the emotion and energy of the event. Some even shave their heads and join in on the long trek from the city center to the cave temple's crest. If you visit this event, I recommend doing so in the first of the festival's days. The last day of the event brings in half of the population of the entire weekend, 500,000 people. And the heat, crowding, and smell become quite challenging to withstand in its final hours. The legend of Thaipusam goes something like this. Shiva sent his dwarf sage by the name of Agastya to build 2 hillocks in southern India. Knowing that this job might be slightly outside his abilities, Agastya passed the message to his disciple, Idumban. Idumban found a boy who appeared to be in poverty and requested his help in exchange for untold wealth, but to his shock, the boy refused, saying that all this land indeed belonged to him. Infuriated at the boy's apparent insolence, Idumban set out to sternly lecture the boy and give him a lesson in respect. But, as it turned out, the boy was not in poverty. He was simply a poorly dressed Murugan when he was in his youth. Realizing his error, Idumban began to plead for forgiveness for his embarrassing oversight. Murugan, being a kind-hearted soul, forgave Idumban. He granted Agastya's wish and delivered the hillocks as was the original objective. Idumban, in response to this overwhelming gesture, made a requirement that anyone wishing to come to these hillocks must carry a hill-shaped burden or kavadi and beg forgiveness, and those who do shall see their wishes granted. It's a nice story that plays out in the human-orchestrated ceremony of Thaipusam, and most of the main tenets of the myth are kept at the heart of the event. It's unique in that it's a masquerade for the repentant and the humbled to come and give thanks for Lord Murugan's assistance in bringing them love or granting them pregnancy, or even healing a sick relative. And, Hindu myth or no, if the world today made this much ceremony to give thanks, to humble themselves, or to pray so deeply for the welfare of others, we would likely be in much better shape.